Hello, welcome back. It's so good to see you. So, today I'm going to be reading another short, spooky story. Although this one is a little bit longer than the previous videos, so maybe I don't have to read it as slowly. I really like this story. I think it is so creepy, so I really hope that you enjoy it. But because it is so much, not so much longer, but it's longer, there's definitely going to be page turning sounds since I'm reading it from an actual book. So I hope you don't mind. Okay, this story is called The Forgotten Room. 3 weeks ago, I bought my grandma's house. She was selling it to move into a nursing home, while other buyers turned their noses up at the shag carpets and the green wallpaper. They filled me with happiness. Every nook and cranny of that house held a memory for me. The floor, riding a tricycle across it, while my grandpa chased me, cursing under his breath. The wood-paneled walls, taping my drawings of monsters and unicorns up there like it was my own private art gallery. When we moved in a week ago, though, I noticed something different, something I'd never seen before. Off the kitchen, between the bathroom and the pantry, there was a door. Danny got to it first. "Hey, Bree, look at this," he said, pushing it open. It didn't open to a closet or a pantry. It opened to a room. It was small, maybe 6 feet by 10 feet, and had a little window at the end, framed by tattered yellow curtains. The wall was painted sky blue, and the floor was hard wood like the rest of the house. Other than the curtains, the room seemed to be in good condition, better condition than the rest of the house even. Weird, I've never seen this room before. In all the days I've spent at my grandma's house, I'd never seen it. And I was one of those curious kids who opened every cabinet, closet, and drawer. "Oh, your grandma got it added on after?" "I don't think so. She's too cheap for that." I mean, if she didn't take down this peeling floral wallpaper, do you really think she'd add a whole room? "Oh, wait." Danny's hand snaked around the door. "It's got a lock. She probably locked it because she didn't want you messing it up." He grinned. "Or maybe she kept her liquor in there." "Yeah, I guess that's it." But I still felt uneasy. First, my grandma wasn't the type to hide stuff from us. She let my brother and I play with everything. "Our time together is the most important thing," she always said. "Nothing else matters." Second, it was an old 70s house. Except for a few of the bathrooms, none of the doors had locks. "Maybe we shouldn't be in here," I said suddenly. Danny laughed. "Bree, this is our house now. We can go wherever we want." "That's the point. I don't want to be here." Fine. We walked back into the kitchen. He shut the door behind us. That night, though I had trouble falling asleep, I played through my memories, trying to remember that little wooden door. I must have seen it before. I know every inch of this house like the back of my hand. I imagined it in the kitchen, across from the table, as Grandma and I made mushroom soup for Christmas Eve dinner. I imagined it when she held my hand, telling me it was all okay. I'd find a different date for prom. into my memories, like I was hammering a rusty nail into a board of wood. But every time I forced it into a memory, my heart sank, my mind swam. I felt no moment of reckoning, no epiphany, no deja vu. I'd never seen that door in my life. When I got home from work the next day, I found Danny moving our love seat into the room. "What are you doing?" I screeched, leaping at him. "I thought we could hang out in the room." "Why? It's cozy, isn't it?" "No." "Look, if you don't like it, fine," he grunted as he slid the love seat a few feet. "But I like the room, okay? I'll just sit there alone and play Skyrim or something." I laughed. "You still haven't beaten Skyrim? Did that thing come out like years ago?" "Yeah," he said, looking at the ground in disappointment. I walked over and helped him slide the love seat the last few feet. When it was finally in the room, even I had to admit it looked nice, cozy. The love seat was almost the same width as the room, and when it faced the window, it gave a sort of reading nook kind of vibe. Danny flopped down on the couch and pulled out his laptop. "No, I'll sit with you," I said, "as long as you don't make me watch you play." He smiled. The two of us sat there on the love seat, arms around each other, while he fixed his eyes on the computer. I stared out the window. Beyond the tattered curtains, I could make out the Ralstons' backyard. Even after all these years, their swing set was still up. 2 little kids were playing on it. The girl was on the swings while the boy sat on the little fort atop the slide. "Those must be their grandkids," I said. "I remember playing with the Ralston kids when I was younger. Jenny and James Ralston. Did I tell you about them?" "Yeah, Jenny's the one that smashed all your Play-Doh sculptures, right?" "Yeah, she lied about it too. Said the wind did it." "Like, really? Did she think I was going to believe that?" I laughed and got off the couch. "It's cold in here. I'm going to get my sweater." "Oh, good idea. Can you get my jacket too?" "Sure." I slipped around the love seat and out the door. I walked through the kitchen and into the dining room. I froze. Out the dining room window stood the Ralston swing set. It was old, splintered, sagging, decaying. The yellow plastic of the slide was stained with brown. One chain of the swing was broken, swaying limply in the wind. The children were gone. "Bree?" I heard Danny's muffled voice through the dining room wall. That's when I realized the room didn't face the outside. It faced the dining room. There was no way it could have a window. "Danny?" I ran into the kitchen. The door hung open. Light rippled and flashed against it. The sunlight reflected off a lake. "Danny!" He didn't turn around. He sat utterly still on the love seat. He wasn't looking at the computer, which was making random dragon noises. He was staring at the window. I looked up. Through the window, the children were coming closer. The girl had abandoned the swings and was several feet from the glass. The boy had hopped down from the fort and jogged towards us. Neither had a face, just skin, stretched and smooth where their faces should have been. Before I had time to react, the door shut in my face. "No!" I screamed. I grabbed the doorknob and pulled. It was locked. Danny, can you hear me?" I screamed. I pounded on the door. It shook underneath me. "Danny, unlock the door. Let me in." Silence. I screamed. I cried. I pounded on that door with all that I had. Breathless, weak, gasping for air. But when I finally stepped back, it wasn't a door anymore. It was a bare wall. I stared at the floor wallpaper for several minutes, the strength draining away from my legs. Then I ran into the garage, rifled through the boxes of our stuff, found a hammer. I ran back inside and with a primal yell flung the hammer into the wall. I pulled it out and swung again. After 20 or so swings, the wall began to crack and crumble. I stuck my fingers inside the cracks, tearing at the drywall. "Danny!" I screamed. I dug faster, harder, until my hands hit something hard. I yanked away. Wood. The door, the room, it was all gone. I ran through the kitchen to the front door. The Ralstons could help me. Maybe they even knew about the room, knew what was going on. They'd lived there next to my grandma for years. I yanked on the front door, half expecting it to be locked in this cursed house. It opened. I leaped out the door, ran down the front steps, across the lawn. The cold air burned my lungs. "Miss Ralston! Jenny! Help!" I shouted as I ran towards the house. I stopped dead in my tracks. The swing set in the backyard was new. The wood was no longer splintered. The slide was bright yellow, no longer stained with mud and dust. One of the swings swayed, its chain making a horrendous creak. I ran faster. When I got to the Ralstons' door, I nearly pounded on it. "Open up!" I shouted. "Please, I need help, Miss Ralston." My mouth went dry. "Danny." I suddenly felt a prickly feeling on the back of my neck, a horrible, tingling sensation that rolled down my spine and drained the strength from my legs. I turned around. The street was empty, silent. The breeze sent a few dry leaves skittering across the pavement. No cars on the street or in the driveways. No lights in any of the houses. I looked up at the house across the street. My blood ran cold. There in the window was a woman watching me. She looked like the neighbor, Miss Patel. Red dress, black hair in a braid, tan skin. Except like the children, she didn't have a face. I glanced at the next house. The Johnsons lived there, an elderly couple who'd always given me caramel candies whenever I walked over. Trembling, I looked up at the windows. They were in the window. They stood there in the shadows, huddled next to each other. Their wrinkled, pale skin stretched smooth over their faces. I glanced from house to house. In every single one, I could make out a faceless figure in the darkness, turned towards me, watching me without eyes. I took a step back. The Ralstons' front door hit my back. No, I whispered. "Where am I?" The door suddenly gave way underneath me. I fell through the darkness. Pain shot through me as I hit the floor. I watched in horror as the door slammed shut in front of me. "Bree?" I looked up to see Miss Ralston standing over me. Relief flooded through me. She had a face. "Bree, sweetheart, are you okay?" She was older than the last time I saw her. Much older. Gray hair tied back in a bun. wrinkled skin. She helped me up, gave me a smile in the dim light. I walked over to the door and looked through the window. The windows across the street were empty. The driveways were filled with cars. 2 kids kicked a ball in the street. Everything was back to normal. Miss Ralston laid a comforting hand on my shoulder. What happened? I lost it. The tears came hot and fast. I shook with every breath, every sob. Danny's gone. There's this secret room in her house, and now it's gone. And I saw these people without faces. At that, her face paled. Do not go back there, she said. Her soft touch turned to a vice grip. Do you hear me, Bree? Do not go back there. You've seen them? Once. She turned toward the window. Her wrinkled face cast in the white sunlight. What are they? You do not want to know, sweetheart. Trust me. Please. She finally turned towards me, folding her legs neatly underneath her. Do you ever wish you were a child again, playing in your childhood home with not a care in the world? I nodded. Or if you were older like me, you would be reminiscing about the early years of marriage. When Don and I were young, raising Jenny and James, we spent quite a lot of time longing to be back in the good old days, back in the neighborhood when we were young, happier. It's a normal part of the human experience. Nostalgia. What's that got to do with anything? Nostalgia takes on many forms, sweetheart, and it can be awfully dangerous. She sighed and stared at the floor. Those creatures, the faceless, made the secret rooms, this whole second dimension, overlaid underneath ours. But they need the nostalgia to live. It's their sustenance, sweetheart, like a good burger, or one of those pumpkin spice lattes. She laughed. I didn't. Why are they faceless? I asked. Memories are imperfect, especially remembering exactly what someone's face looked like 20 years ago. So, they don't wear a face. But I was cut off by a resounding, sharp thump at the front door. Don't move, Miss Ralston said. She slowly got up and paced to the door. She pushed the curtains aside and peered through the window. She breathed a sigh of relief. Don't worry, sweetheart. It's just the mailman. She opened the door and accepted the package. I sat still in the kitchen chair, the hard wood clawing onto my back. All I could think about was Danny in that place, wondering if he was okay or if he was gone forever. She walked back to the table, limping slightly. I glanced around in the awkward silence and noticed a photo of Mr. Ralston hanging over the fireplace. Where's Mr. Ralston? Her expression darkened. He passed away 3 years ago. Prostate cancer. I'm so sorry. I miss him every day, she said wistfully, glancing at the photo. The life of a widow. I'd never wish that on anyone. I stood up, the heat rising in my face. Then, help me get Danny back. Her face paled. We cannot go there. I need to try, and I'm going to, with or without you. She stared at me, her blue eyes fearful. You don't have to come with me. Just help me get back to that place. Tell me everything I need to know about the faceless. She stood up and motioned me to follow. She walked up the old steps of her house, covered in brown shag carpeting and yellow floral wallpaper. "Why didn't Grandma tell me about all this?" I asked as we made our way to the second floor. "You would think—" She cut me off. "I don't believe your grandma ever saw them," she said. "The less nostalgic you are, the less likely you are to slip into their world. Your grandma, I don't think she thought much of the past." We stopped. 5 doors lined the hallway, cut into the green wallpaper, all closed tight. She pointed to the middle one. "I'm afraid I wasn't quite honest with you. I've seen the other world 4 more times than just once." She looked at me, her lip trembling. "The middle door leads to a room that is not in the floor plans. Sometimes I go in there just to look out the window." Her voice cracked, and a flush of red flooded her face. "I see Don out there, mowing the lawn in his cargo shorts and red t-shirt. I know it isn't him, but sometimes I just need to see him again." She took in a deep breath. I awkwardly touched her shoulder. "I'll see you when I get back, okay?" She nodded. I swung the door open and stepped inside. It was a small room, like the one in Grandma's house. Even though we were on the second floor, the window opened to ground level. The swing set was new again, the lawn freshly mowed. I pulled the window open and climbed out it. The air was warm and breezy, fluttering my hair. The sun seemed to glow supernaturally bright, veiled in a thin layer of clouds. The grass was too green, too soft, and everything was too quiet. I walked down the sloping hill towards the swing set. Where would they have taken Danny? Probably inside the house, right? But last time the front door just led me back to reality. So not the front door then. I walked over to one of the windows, cupped my hands, and looked inside. It seemed to be the kitchen window. I cracked it open and climbed inside. Thump thump. A faint sound came from above. I crept over to the stairs and climbed up them quickly and quietly. It grew louder, like the dull throb of a heartbeat. Thump thump. My hand tightened around the first doorknob. I pulled it open. Danny! He was bound to a chair in the corner of the room, a piece of duct tape stuck to his mouth. He stomped on the floor, trying to struggle free. A deep slash ran across one side of his face, as if they had tried to slice his face off. I ran over to the cords and yanked at them. His muffled cries sounded over the duct tape. I know, I'm working as fast as I can," I hissed back. The ropes fell to the floor, more frantic murmurs from him. I bent over and ripped off the duct tape. As soon as it came off, he spoke. "They're behind you." I whipped around. Jenny and James Ralston stood in the doorway, their blank faces pointed right at me. The skin was smooth and pale, stretching over the contours of their face. It rippled and roiled as if something moved beneath. They took a step forward. "Jenny! James!" The two faceless stopped in their tracks. "Jenny! James!" the voice called again from downstairs. It was Miss Ralston's voice. the faceless mother of the family. Jenny and James immediately retreated eagerly, running down the stairs. Okay, we'll go down, go out the front door, and then come back in. The front door goes back to our dimension, or whatever. I don't know. You shouldn't have come back for me, he whispered. We might get... Of course I'd come back for you. Now come on. I grabbed his wrist and yanked. We crept out into the hallway. I peered down the stairs. The foyer looked empty. We slowly and quietly walked down the stairs. The wood creaked underneath us. As we made it into the foyer, a low, murmuring sound came from the kitchen. Danny's hand fell on the front door. Wait, I said. I tiptoed into the hallway and peered into the kitchen. A faceless Mr. Ralston sat at the kitchen table, in front of a steaming plate of chicken. Jenny and James sat on either side of him, making soft, murmuring sounds. Miss Ralston stood in front of them, smiling. She had a face. Miss Ralston, I shouted. She looked up. So did the faceless. Run, I screamed. She slowly shook her head. It's not really them. You know that. Bree, Danny shouted from the foyer. Miss Ralston, please. A ripping sound echoed through the house. The three smooth faces split down the middle. Then their heads snapped open to reveal rows of needle-like fangs. Miss Ralston, I screamed. She ran. She zipped out of the kitchen faster than I'd ever seen an old woman run. She grabbed my hand, and the two of us ran. Danny yanked the door open. Slam! It rattled shut behind us. We fell into the damp, bright green grass. Quick, back inside, I yelled. I wrenched the door open. The foyer was empty. The three of us collapsed onto the floor, panting, hearts racing. I grabbed Danny and hugged him as tight as I could. Over the next few weeks, we helped Miss Ralston board up the middle door in her upstairs hallway. We tried to get her to move away, but she refused to. At least let me relive my memories in this old house, she said, even if I can't be with him. Danny and I moved out soon after. We visited Grandma at the nursing home about once a week. I never planned to tell her about the secret room, but one day, while we were playing checkers, taking a deep breath, I started, Grandma, did you ever see an extra door in the kitchen between the pantry and the bathroom? I expected her to give me her classic, what the hell are you talking about, look. But instead, she just smiled. Beautiful little room, isn't it? She said. You went in that room? Of course. And I would have stayed there too, she said. But this nursing home is so wonderful. The nurses go the extra mile to make sure you feel comfortable. The food is really great too. Really? I asked, thinking about the mushy chicken and green jello I'd shared with her last week. Oh yes, she said with a smile. Everyone's so deliciously nostalgic here. That's when I noticed the scar hidden among her wrinkles, cutting from her forehead to her chin. She just smiled. That was the end of the story. Oh my gosh, so creepy, right? Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you